Okay, so one of our Core for the Greater Good members posted some agenda items that are going to be visited today during the city council's meeting. And originally we were thinking that it would be good to have people be able to comment on those agenda items. But we were also thinking it's really important for us to just share how we're thinking about those items. And then in part because we really don't have news media outlets or sources that are informed and that are closely following what's happening in our local governing bodies. That's a conversation for another video, but so what we're going to do is just show you some things that we noticed and that we think that you also should be aware of. And also you can see how For the Greater Good thinks about those things. So, and again, we're not experts. We're just coming from that vantage point that the public's need should take precedent over corporate greed. So this is the beginning of the agenda that the city council posted, and you'll notice that before anything really happens, we're going to have a drought response and water supply projects update. We actually don't know what this is going to be about. We're guessing that Zanoni or Murphy will talk about the drought response and the water supply, but really it could be anything. One of our For the Greater Good members reports that the city's been working on the gates at Choke Canyon and Wesley Seal. So despite the rain, the water levels haven't moved any. He actually also talked to Ramirez from the water department earlier this year out of concern that they were planning on working on these two gates at the same time, which we were thinking would bring the water levels down or have an impact on the water levels is probably the more appropriate way of saying that. And again, we're concerned that they're making decisions and doing things in such a way to justify their pursuit of desalination, which we're still in the position that this is really problematic for our area and for the entire region, since Corpus is responsible for the water supply for hundreds of thousands of people and small and local businesses. This is item 7. Basically, there's an ordinance adopting the 10-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan and amending the comprehensive plan of the city to include the master plan. You all may recall that we adopted Carroll Lane Park a few years ago. We've been trying to get some a park bench there, among other things. And we're going to have to pay for that ourselves. But we were also concerned because the way that some of the proposals have been written, we think that there's actually going to be less money and resources that are going to the parks. We haven't been able to keep track of this the way that we would like to, but as a reminder that we need to dive deeply into this and get a better understanding of what's going on with the master plan. Item 16. So this is something that's just kind of really bothered us. Item 16 is a motion authorizing a 1-year supply agreement with the GP Transport Inc. of Gregory. So this is a business that's located in Gregory outside of the city. And the contract could be anywhere from $440,000 to $1.3 million for dump truck hauling services for Corpus Christi water. And, this is something that really bothers us because what we're doing by contracting with a company that's outside of our boundaries is the dollars are going outside of the city. 2, when we're contracting with a private company, for city operations, then what we're doing is we're subsidizing private industry profits. And when we're subsidizing private industry profits, what we also understand that to mean is that, we don't know how much the workers are actually getting paid for those businesses. And we know that the business owner is going to be generating profit for itself based on like the money that we as a city collect for our operations. And so we're just wondering, like, one, why don't we have dump trucks that are doing our own hauling here in Corpus? I mean, for the city of Corpus, if we had our own dump trucks to do this stuff, we could hire city workers, and instead of paying the profits for private businesses, we could be using that money to provide benefits for city workers, healthcare, right, vacation. We could actually provide a job for a city worker whose mission would be to serve the city and its residents. And so it just doesn't make sense for us to be subsidizing profits when we should be centering the needs of people. And I mean, are we really saving money when we're employing this kind of business model? I don't think so, right? We're actually just making other people rich rather than focusing on the needs of the community. Okay, item 17 is a 16-month service agreement with another private industry that's outside of the city of Corpus Christi in Richardson, Texas. But this time we're going to pay them more than $250,000 or up to almost $500,000 for them to develop a utility rate model for the city's water and wastewater system. And, we're just wondering, like, what's that all about? Is this related to how much more expensive desalination is going to make the operations for our water system and our wastewater system? And so they've got to come up with some sort of new model to accommodate, these projects that are the desalination projects that are, God, could cost us more than $1 billion. Remember, we're gonna have to borrow that money. And so this just seems so backward to us to be asking for somebody to help us with this when, really everything that we've been doing around desalination has demonstrated that the city isn't planning things carefully and considering costs before it jumps into this $1 billion commitment that's going to bind the water customers, specifically households, right, to have to cover the higher cost of having a desal facility that's actually not even for us, it's for future heavy industry, because they want to bring more and more high volume water users into our area. This is item 21. I put a star by that because one, it's huge, right? The motion awarding 32 two-year master service agreements for various engineering professional services in aggregate not to exceed the amount of $18.6 million with projects located citywide. And what we have here is this changing of language that we think is like connected to this, but also is super problematic, because if you notice this section 24, the language that's getting struck out. So the original language reads, Community Enrichment Park Development Fund revenues and expenditures are recorded in this fund for community enrichment programs and activities, not in the general fund. Not in the general revenues. Oh goodness, this language is just so crazy. But let me backtrack and just say, like, the thing that struck us here is that they're getting rid of the community enrichment component. And if you'll notice, it says revenues come from park development fee in lieu of land dedication and earnings on investments. Revenues are authorized to be appropriated at the beginning of each fiscal year and will be restricted as per current city codes and ordinances. And unspent appropriations will carry over in the fiscal year. So what we're wondering is if it says in the red lines, acquisition of land for a public park and or construction improvements for a public park, including utility extensions required to serve recreational areas. So it sounds like this money can only be used for purchasing of parks and then working on infrastructure. It's not going to be, there's not going to be money that's dedicated to community enrichment in terms of programming and activities. So we're wondering, what does that mean? That we're no longer going to have money that's going to be dedicated or used for enrichment activities and programmings? Does that mean that we're going to have to rely on more corporate sponsorship? Maybe this is a way like, hey, everybody that gets tax abatements, you won't have to pay your taxes, but also we're not going to be funding community enrichment programs. So maybe you can donate money to us so that we can have programming, and then we can celebrate you and tell the city how great you are, because you're donating money for activities as opposed to paying your fair share, and then allowing us to be able to have community enrichment and programming as part of city operations. I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me or to us. The last thing we wanted to highlight for you was that the city is going to be going into executive session. They'll be covering at least 5 topics. And here are 3 topics that we wanted to call your attention to. 1, the city is going to be talking with their attorneys about at least 3 lawsuits filed against the city. And so again, somebody's suing the city. There's stuff that's going on, wondering if, connected to the police department and poor choices that people have made that have resulted in upending people's lives. So we're going to be sued, or we're being sued, and that's going to have a cost on us. They're also going to be talking about annexed land, the Carolyn Heights area. Again, we can't even take care of the part of the city that already exists, and we keep expanding and expanding, which actually is just going to make it more expensive for us to do city operations. So I'm wondering, I swear city council's so backward. I don't even know what they're thinking. And then the last thing that we wanted to call your attention to, it's like in that category of things that make you go, right? The city's going to be going over disciplinary rules of professional conduct with the attorneys, and this is related to the city auditor. We want to know what's going on with the city auditor that requires us having to have conversations about disciplinary rules over professional conduct. Like, transparency is a major issue, and we know that even with the agenda items that are public, there are problems. The city is constantly updating the agenda up until the last minute, so we're always watching and trying to figure out, can we talk about this stuff? Are there things that are going to be removed? And it makes it really hard for us as individuals who are dedicating time and energy to following the agenda. Like, what does that mean for people who don't have the time to do those kinds of things? What it means is that public officials can't be held accountable. City manager can't be held accountable. And they get to do what they want to do. And, the balls are already rolling when we're trying to pay catch up. But, for the greater good is basically trying to commit to keeping ourselves informed, you informed, and hoping to stop this madness. We deserve better. Yeah. All right. That's all we have for now.